They waited 8 years to hear the sound of tiny feet, and just when hope had returned, it was snatched away. But that wasn't the end, because even love, when tested, can break silently. Bruce opens the door, drops his keys. The house is too quiet. Something feels off. "Susan? Babe?" He walks into the bedroom, stops cold, blood on the floor. Bruce. "Jesus? Susan?" He rushes down the hall. The bathroom door is cracked open. He pushes it slowly.
I didn't know it was going to happen. I was just getting dressed. Then I felt something wet, and I looked down.
"No, no, no!"
I thought this time was different, Bruce. I really did. I prayed. I watched every movement. I avoided everything. I wanted this baby more than anything. It was my body. Again. It failed again. Why does it keep happening? Why can't I hold on to anything that brings me joy?
Stop. Don't do this to yourself. Tears welling, gently brushing her hair back. Hey, look at me. He gently lifts her face to meet his eyes. Bruce's voice low and firm. You didn't fail. This is not your fault. Do you hear me?
I just wanted to give you a child. I just wanted to feel like a mother.
Bruce pulled her close. You are everything to me, Susan. Baby or no baby. I'm not leaving. I'm not walking away. Susan, shaking in his arms. You swear? I swear on everything I've ever loved. Bruce said firmly. But 1 year later, he broke the vow he swore with tears in his eyes. Bruce, why are you letting your family treat me this way? Susan's voice cracked in the dim bedroom, barely above the soft beat of rain against the window. She stood near the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around herself. Her eyes were already brimming, but she held back, just barely. Bruce didn't turn to look at her. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it was safer than her face. I've already told you what I think, he muttered, voice flat. I gave you an option. You shut it down. An option? She repeated, stunned. You mean surrogacy? He scoffed lightly. Yeah, that one. The only thing that made any damn sense. Susan stepped closer, voice breaking. Because I said no to someone else carrying my child. You just shut down? You stopped trying? You made it clear you wanted it your way, he snapped, finally looking up at her. So go ahead. Keep trying your way. Her mouth dropped open, a tear slipping down her cheek. So that's it? You're done? I'm tired, Susan, Bruce said, rubbing his face like he was trying to wash the years off it. Tired of the hospital visits. Tired of you waking me up with hope that dies before breakfast. Tired of the crying, the silence, the pressure. It's not a marriage anymore. It's a waiting room. Susan's voice rose in disbelief. You think I enjoy this? That I like waking up every month and failing? That I planned for your mother to call me barren? He shook his head slowly. I don't know, Susan. What I do know is you refused the only thing that might have given us a child. And I wasn't going to keep dragging myself through your expectations. So yeah, I stepped back. I let you do your thing, because honestly, he stood, brushing past her. I'm over it. Her knees buckled slightly as she reached out to stop him. Bruce, I needed you. I needed us. He looked down at her hand on his wrist. His eyes didn't soften. I was there, he said calmly. You just didn't like the solution I gave. And with that, he pulled his hand away. Susan's sobs finally broke free. Bruce, please, don't leave this room. Susan's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of a woman breaking apart. She stood by the bed, her hands clenched tightly by her sides. The rain outside grew heavier, sliding down the windows like tears the sky couldn't hold back. Bruce didn't answer. He moved around the room in silence, folding the duvet like he was packing away the last pieces of their marriage. The pillow under his arm, his toothbrush already tucked into his hand. He wasn't rushing. He didn't even look angry, just distant, detached. I'm begging you, she said, her voice catching. Let's just try again. I'll do anything. Just don't give up on us. He sighed, not in frustration but in exhaustion. Susan, I don't have anything left to give. That broke her. She staggered back slightly, like he had physically pushed her. You promised me forever, she said, voice shaking. You said no matter what came, we'd fight together. But now you just walk away? Bruce turned toward the door. Because I've already fought. You just didn't notice when I stopped winning. Her tears fell fast now, streaming down her cheeks as she reached for his arm. You're just tired. I understand. We both are. But please, Bruce, I need you. He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then gently peeled it off. I needed you too, he said softly. But the moment I mentioned surrogacy, you made it clear. You wanted it your way. You didn't even ask how I felt. I wanted to carry our child, she cried. I wanted to feel it kick, to be a mother with every part of me. And what about me? He snapped suddenly. What about the man watching the woman he loves fall apart every month? What about the man who has to smile in public while dying inside? You think you're the only one hurting? He didn't wait for her answer. He walked out, and the door closed. Susan stood there frozen, the silence in the room more deafening than the slam could have ever been. She staggered to the bed, then fell to the floor beside it, her body folding into itself like she wanted to disappear. Her face buried into the edge of the mattress, muffling a scream that refused to come out. The pain was too loud. Her arms wrapped around her stomach, the one place she had hoped would give her the title she longed for, mother. But it remained hollow. Month after month, the emptiness grew louder, more painful, more cruel. She sobbed until her voice cracked, until her chest burned from the force of it. All the years, all the waiting, all the quiet battles she fought alone, the blood tests, the pitying nurses, the awkward silences at family gatherings, the unspoken shame. She could still hear her aunt's voice from last December. You better pray that man stays. Men don't wait forever. She had smiled. She had laughed it off. But now he was gone, to the guest room just across the hall, but it felt like another continent. Susan looked up at the ceiling, her throat raw, her face drenched in tears. Maybe I am a failure. The words slipped from her lips like a confession, a curse, a truth she hated but believed more and more each day. She wasn't just losing Bruce, she was losing herself. Her heart ached as memories came crashing back, each one sharper than the last. Susan sat in silence, eyes fixed on nothing, but her mind wouldn't stop. She thought back to the constant, unwelcome visits from Bruce's family. They never called, they never knocked, they just arrived, entitled, loud, judgmental. Their presence always felt like an inspection, not a visit. They entered like they owned the house, like she was a guest in her own home. They would march into her kitchen uninvited, lifting pot lids without asking, wrinkling their noses at her food like she was some clumsy housemaid. And every time, they left her space in shambles, used, picked apart, and always followed by sharp, stinging criticism. You can't keep a home. No wonder you can't keep a baby. She tried. God knows she tried, to impress them, to earn some form of respect. But it was never enough. They weren't just judging her housekeeping. They were judging her as a woman. Barren, they would mutter, loud enough for her to hear, as if the only thing that defined her was her ability to give Bruce a child, as if her worth expired with every failed attempt to conceive. Worse were the crueler whispers, ones meant to bruise, not just wound. A man in a woman's body, they'd sneer behind her back. The insinuation that she wasn't a real woman at all, just a body taking up space, wasting a man's time. Bruce knew. He heard it too, and he never said a word. Susan swallowed the lump rising in her throat as another memory surfaced, one she'd buried deep, the day she miscarried, after 8 painful years of waiting. She had bled on the bathroom floor, shaking, whispering the child's name she'd picked in secret. Bruce had been there then. He'd cried, held her hand in the ER, kissed her forehead and whispered, "We'll try again, my love. I'm not going anywhere." But barely a year later, he was no longer the man who held her. His mother came to the house 2 weeks after the miscarriage, sat across from her, legs crossed and tone sharp. "You're wasting your energy in that office. If you want to be a mother, act like one. Quit your job. Focus on your womb." Susan had looked at Bruce then, pleading silently. Just one word, one defense. But he didn't even flinch. He simply said, "Maybe she's right." And that was it. She resigned 2 days later, walked away from the career she had built, from the space where she was respected and capable, because being a wife apparently meant sacrificing everything. Now, she had nothing to show for it. No child, no job, no voice. And Bruce, he had changed. She saw it in the way he moved, the way he avoided her gaze, the way he came home late and spoke in half sentences. She saw it when he started sleeping at the edge of the bed, when his mother started suggesting other women, real women as she put it, who were willing and fertile. And the worst part? He didn't object. He didn't even seem shocked. He just sat there, listening, quiet, cold. And one night, when she asked if he still loved her, he sighed, deep and tired, and said, "I've been tolerating this marriage for a while, Susan. Maybe it's time we both accept the truth." Tolerating. Like she was a mistake he hadn't yet corrected. Susan clenched her fists in her lap as more tears spilled. Her shoulders shook as she leaned forward, breath shallow. She kept hearing his voice from a year ago, after the miscarriage, telling her she wasn't alone, that they'd try again, but he lied. She was alone. She was fighting alone. And the one person who once called her his joy, his light, his everything, was now the same man slowly dimming every light around her. For weeks now, Bruce had dangled the word divorce like a sword above her head. It had become his favorite threat, cold, casual, dropped in the middle of silence or arguments like it meant nothing. At first, Susan thought it was just his frustration talking, a phase he would outgrow. But when he stopped coming home altogether, when days turned into nights, and nights stretched into aching loneliness, she began to wonder if he meant it this time. Still, she tried to cope. She told herself to be strong. She forced herself to keep moving, cleaning the house, washing clothes that no one wore, cooking meals he never came home to eat. The chores were mechanical now, a quiet distraction from a heart that couldn't stop breaking. She didn't want to believe it was over. Not after everything. Not after 8 years. Not after the promises. That evening, as the sun cast its dying light across the living room floor, she heard it, the front door creaking open. Susan froze mid-step, her heart instantly racing. She turned sharply, her chest tightening with a mix of relief and fear. Could it be? Had Bruce finally come back to her? Had he come to say he was sorry, to try again, to fight for what was left? She ran to the door, hope quickening her steps, the ghost of a smile already forming on her lips. But the moment she pulled it open, that hope died instantly. Standing in the doorway was Bruce, and beside him, clinging to his arm like she belonged there, was a younger woman, beautiful, dressed in fitted jeans and a confidence that made Susan's stomach twist. Her makeup was perfect, her smile smug, but it was Bruce's expression that shattered her completely, blank, unbothered, even disgusted, as he glanced at Susan like she was a stranger he barely tolerated. Susan couldn't breathe. Her feet were glued to the floor, her lips parted in disbelief. Before she could find the words, Bruce brushed past her without a second glance, dragging the woman along like she had always been part of the house. "Move!" he snapped, voice low and sharp as a blade. Susan stumbled sideways, stunned, her body cold with shock. She turned just in time to see them walking down the hallway. Not to the guest room, to their room, to the room she had cried in, prayed in, bled in. They entered without hesitation. The door shut behind them. The lock clicked. Susan's chest heaved, air stuck in her throat. For a moment she just stood there, paralyzed. Then the horror caught up with her. "No, no, no," she cried, rushing forward. Her fists pounded the door, rage and heartbreak choking her words. "Bruce! Bruce, what are you doing? You can't! This is our home! That's our room!" But there was no answer. Only silence on the other side of the door. Her fists slammed harder, her voice cracked. "After everything we've been through, you bring another woman into my house?" The tears didn't fall, not yet. Her body was shaking too much to even let them through. She leaned her forehead against the door, her fists still trembling. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the humiliation, the sheer cruelty of being replaced so casually, so publicly. And he didn't even flinch. Susan's fists slammed against the door, again and again, desperation pouring from her throat like a flood she could no longer contain. "Bruce! Bruce! Open this door! Please!" Her voice echoed down the hallway, hoarse, broken. The same hallway they used to fill with laughter, now filled with a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Suddenly, the lock clicked from the inside, loud and violent, and the door swung open with force. Bruce stood in the doorway, bare-chested, wearing only a pair of loose shorts. His chest rose and fell with fury, eyes red with anger, lips curled in disgust. "Are you out of your mind?" he bellowed, voice deeper and darker than she had ever heard it. Susan stumbled back a step, her breath catching. Her eyes searched his face, desperate to find the man she once knew beneath the rage. "What is wrong with you, Susan?" he snarled, stepping forward. "You're making a scene." Her voice trembled, her hands raised as if in defense. "Did you just bring another woman into our—" "Yes!" he snapped before she could finish, the words slamming into her like a slap. He stepped even closer, eyes sharp and unblinking. "Yes, Susan, I did. I brought her here so she can do what you couldn't do for the last 8 years." Susan's knees buckled. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her body felt like it was shutting down, one emotion at a time. "Bruce," she whispered, and then came the word that shattered everything. "Baron." He said it quietly at first, then louder. "That's what you are, Susan, Baron. The one word I've avoided saying for 8 years, but look at where that's gotten us." Susan's body collapsed to the floor as her legs gave out, sobs choking her throat. She knelt before him, both palms pressed to the cold tiles, her face lifted with pleading eyes. "Bruce, you are hurting me," she whispered. "I'm breaking. I am tired of fighting alone. Please, please, don't do this. Let's try again. Please. I still believe in us." He didn't flinch, didn't blink, just looked down at her like she was an inconvenience. Then he reached out and shoved her aside with one hand. Not violently, but with enough force to say, "You're in the way." Susan crumpled against the wall, gasping. Her heart wasn't just aching anymore. It was bleeding. "I warned you," Bruce said coldly, his voice now low and biting. "Do not disturb me again." And with that, he stepped back into the room. The door closed behind him. The lock turned once more. Click. That night, Susan lay curled up on the narrow visitor's bed, arms wrapped around her chest as if trying to hold herself together. The sheets smelled like dust and disuse. The mattress creaked beneath her shifting weight, every sound reminding her that she was sleeping in a room that had never been meant for her. But what truly kept her awake wasn't the discomfort. It was the noise. From down the hallway came the muffled rhythm of another world, moans, soft gasps, and then, heartbreakingly clear, her name no longer on his lips, but his name on the lips of someone else. The woman he brought in. The woman moaning his name. Bruce. Susan shut her eyes tight, stuffed the pillow against her ears, but the walls did nothing to protect her. Every sound stabbed her. Every second felt like an hour. She didn't cry. Not anymore. The tears had dried up, replaced by a numbness so deep it made her question whether her heart was still beating. Eventually, her body gave in to the exhaustion. Not sleep, just a blackout of emotion. By the time her eyes fluttered open, pale morning light was seeping through the blinds. Her body was sore. Her head throbbed. But it was the silence that struck her most. No voices, no footsteps. The woman was gone. She forced herself to sit up, her limbs slow and heavy. When she stepped into the hallway, the bedroom door, their bedroom, was wide open, like nothing had happened, like it had all been a terrible dream. But on the dining table, something caught her eye. A thick envelope, crisp, official. Susan's breath caught as she approached, her bare feet silent on the cold tiles. She picked up the envelope slowly, her hands trembling even before she read the words. Divorce documents. Not a note, not a warning, just a stack of cold legal forms and a signature line already filled in with Bruce's name. Her stomach turned. Without thinking, she stormed into the kitchen. She expected him to be gone, or hiding. But there he was, sitting at the dining counter in his white t-shirt, legs crossed, sipping coffee like nothing in the world had shifted. The same man who had once held her during her darkest hour now wouldn't even look at her. The woman was gone. The betrayal had passed like a storm he never intended to clean up after. He glanced up briefly, then returned to his cup. No hello, no apology, just silence. Susan stood there, still clutching the divorce papers in her hand, her breath shallow, her heart numb. She hadn't even processed the weight of what had been forced into her palms when Bruce walked back into the room, expression blank, coffee cup now set aside. "I need you to leave," he said flatly. The words struck harder than the documents. Susan looked up slowly, her lips slightly parted, confused at first, then stunned. Her voice didn't come. She didn't even have the energy to form a protest. Bruce continued, his tone void of warmth, like he was discussing a business transaction. "She's moving in. I don't want drama. I don't want any scenes. You've signed the papers, and there's nothing left between us." She blinked once, twice. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She simply stood there, eyes wide and hollow, as if her soul had been vacuumed from her body. "Don't make this difficult," he added, as if she was the problem. Her hands slowly dropped to her sides, the papers still hanging loosely in one, fingers trembling slightly. Her mouth moved as though to speak, but no words came, only silence. The pain was beyond tears now. Something cracked inside her, but she didn't collapse. She didn't wail. She didn't even argue. She just turned away. She walked into the bedroom, not theirs anymore, just a room she once called hers, and pulled out a small bag, the same bag she once packed for vacations, for weekends away with him. Now, it carried her entire life in silence. She didn't even glance back at the closet. The sight of his things, the things they bought together, now felt foreign. She didn't know what hurt more, that he was so calm, or that she had no strength left to react. She left without saying goodbye, without asking where she would go, without asking who the woman was that had taken her place in the house where she gave her best years. She boarded the next available bus and headed to Port Harcourt, where her elder sister lived. That was the only place she could think of, a place far enough from Bruce, far enough from that house, far enough from the memories that had turned into weapons. The road was long, but the silence inside her was longer. She didn't cry on the way. She couldn't. There was nothing left to cry with. As she sat on the edge of the couch, watching her twin boys tumble across the soft rug with giggles that filled the room, Susan felt the ache in her heart ease in a way it hadn't in years. The afternoon sun spilled into the living room, casting a golden hue across everything, and for a moment, it felt like the universe had paused. just to let her breathe. Her eyes drifted to the man seated across the room. Morrison, her husband, her second chance, her peace. Coming to Port Harcourt hadn't been part of the plan. It was a retreat, a place she ran to, not knowing what she was searching for. But somehow, the city that once felt like escape had become her refuge, her restart, her new beginning. And now, looking at the life she had built here, she could say it with certainty. Coming to Port Harcourt wasn't bad at all. In fact, it was the best decision she never planned. 2 years ago, she never would have imagined this life. After all the heartbreak, betrayal, and abandonment she had endured, she believed love was something people only got once, and that she had wasted hers. But Morrison had rewritten that story with every act of quiet kindness, every embrace that asked for nothing, and every moment he simply stayed. He was younger, yes, and that had come with its fair share of whispers, judgmental glances, and side comments. People questioned it, some even mocked it. But none of them understood what he had done for her. Morrison was the one who didn't look at her with pity. He didn't see a broken woman. He saw her, fully. He didn't rush her to heal or to love again. Instead, he stood beside her through her silence, her tears, her fear. He gave her space to rebuild herself, and when she was too tired to move forward, he carried her through it without asking for credit. He redefined what it meant to be loved. With him, there were no expectations, no ultimatums, just presence, just warmth, just home. Their love wasn't the loud, dramatic kind. It was deep and quiet, like an anchor, and it became the safest place she had ever known. When Susan discovered she was pregnant just months into their marriage, she was terrified. The fear of loss returned with full force, but Morrison held her hand through every appointment, rubbed her back through every sleepless night, and whispered hope into her soul when she couldn't find the words herself. And when the twins came, healthy, perfect, radiant, he wept. Now, 2 years later, as their sons filled the house with laughter and life, Susan knew this wasn't just a second chance. It was the life she had always deserved. She looked over at Morrison again. He was watching the boys with that familiar softness in his eyes, the same one he had every time he looked at her. And in that gaze, she saw it all. The battles they'd fought, the nights he held her while she shook, the mornings he brewed her tea in silence, the way he made her feel like a woman again, not a wound. Susan smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time in forever, her heart wasn't carrying the weight of proving her worth. She was loved, she was seen, she was home, and this time, it was real. The aroma of grilled fish and ripe plantains filled the air as laughter echoed around the dining table. The twins were mid-story, their mouths full and animated as they described a game they played at school, while Morrison sat beside Susan, smiling, his hand gently resting on hers under the table. For the first time in a long time, life felt light, comfortable, safe. Susan leaned back in her chair, soaking in the moment. The sounds of clinking cutlery, playful chatter, and Morrison's quiet chuckles created a harmony that wrapped around her like a blanket. It was these moments, simple, ordinary, that reminded her how far she had come. Then her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen. It was her sister. Frowning, she picked up. "Hello, Ada?" Her sister's voice came quickly, breathless and edged with concern. "Susan, sorry to interrupt your evening, but I needed to call you immediately. Bruce has been trying to reach you." Susan stiffened. The name hit like a sudden chill. Morrison looked over, his smile fading slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked slowly, rising from the table and stepping away. "He called me twice," Ada said. "He said he's coming to Port Harcourt. He sounded, I don't know, urgent, agitated, like he needs to see you in person." Susan's heart didn't race, but it did tighten. Not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of it. After everything? After abandoning her? After throwing her out and replacing her like a worn-out shoe? "What does he want from me now?" she murmured, more to herself than to her sister. "I don't know," Ada replied. "He didn't say much, just that it was important. He insisted on seeing you." Susan closed her eyes for a moment, her fingers tightening around the phone. Morrison's voice floated softly behind her. "Everything okay?" She turned, giving him a faint nod, but her thoughts had already drifted. Why now? What could possibly be so urgent that Bruce, after all this time, would come looking for her? What does a man who destroyed your world say when he shows up at your doorstep again? Should she meet him? Should she let old ghosts walk through new doors? Subscribe for part 2, because some stories don't end when you heal. They test your healing.